Hello, History 131. Welcome back. Uh, got a unique lecture for you today. Hope everything is going well. And I'm a little disappointed from the outcome of the election, but life goes on. The sun rose this morning, so we must continue. This is your final chapter before test 3, which is scheduled for next Wednesday, November the 11th, which is Veterans Day. So it's 3 chapters, and you have your study guide, hopefully, that would help you prepare for the test. So I will upload the study guide and the announcement for the test again. I will also upload instructions on how to submit your research paper. So hang in there with me and a little more patience. Okay, chapter 10 is entitled The Islamic World. And Islam is the third and final religion that we call the Abrahamic religion. As you know, if you've been following me in the lecture, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all trace their lineage back to the patriarch Abram or Abraham. As you know, each of these three Abrahamic religions have their own holy book. The Hebrews or the Jews is the Old Testament or the Torah. The Christians' book is the New Testament, and of course, the Quran is the holy book of the Muslims. But at the basis of the Quran and the New Testament is the Old Testament. So without Abraham, you couldn't have Jesus or Muhammad or Moses. So some of the key Islamic states that exist today, I start with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, all across North Africa, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Indonesia, the most populous Muslim country in the world. And also very much influenced in the fringes of the Sahara, Chad, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco. I can go on and on, but you can look that up yourself. Now, since 2001 or earlier, Western perception of Islam perceive all Muslims as being terrorists. That is inaccurate. They're no different than you or me. They're bad people on all sides of a religious faith. But let's start with the origin of this religion. A Saudi Arabian merchant by the name of Muhammad, around 610 AD, that's some 600 years after the birth of Christ, had religious vision in the commercial city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. At his death in 632 AD, all Arabia had accepted his belief. 100 years later, his followers controlled Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Iraq, Persia, Iran, northern India, Pakistan, North Africa, Spain, and parts of France. 200 years later, the message of Muhammad had made it across Central Asia to the borders of China. By the 9th century AD, the Muslims had created a brilliant civilization which was headquartered at Baghdad, Iraq. It was a culture that influenced the development of both Eastern and Western society. Now let's set the stage for the founding of this religion. It was founded on the semi-Arab peninsula called Saudi Arabia. It was inhabited by Semitic tribesmen called Bedouins. They were nomadic people who grazed their goats and sheep on sparse patches of grass and supplemented their lifestyle by frequently raiding on passing caravans. supplementing their income. After this faith of Muhammad spread and the people adopted it, the Bedouins, these are the tribesmen, attached themselves to it. They intermarried with the Arabs and assumed an Arab identity. So an Arab originally referred to an Arabian who would be a native of the Arabian Peninsula. The Bedouins were nomadic. They moved from place to place. They had resisted Judaism and Christianity, and they remain animists. They are no similar than the Germanic tribes or our ancestors in Africa, the Native Americans in North and South America. Animists, where they practice the worship of natural spirits and objects such as trees, stones, rocks, earth, sky, you name it. These pre-Islamic Arabs had no belief in an afterlife. Women were considered properties of their fathers and husbands, no different than in Christendom. The Arabs had no political unity beyond their tribal bonds, similar to the Germans. Each tribe had its own laws. Most tribes were fair game for raiding and pillaging. Most Arabs kept 3 months out of the year as sacred, where they stopped fighting so that everyone could attend the holy ceremony in peace in Mecca, the religious center of the Arab world. They prayed at the Kaaba, Kaaba. You might want to Google that. It is a sanctuary that contains the sacred black stone that is believed fell from the heavens and believed by scholars to be a huge meteorite. The faith inspired by Muhammad eventually molded these tribes into a powerful political and social unit. Now, let's look at the faith. Similar to Jews and Christians, Gospels, the account of Muhammad's life was not written down while he lived. We do know that Muhammad was orphaned at the age of 6. He became a merchant in the caravan trade. Later, he worked for a wealthy widow named Khadijah, I love that name, whom he later married, bringing him financial security while she lived. But around the age of 40, in a cave near Mecca, Muhammad had an angelical vision of God's messenger, Gabriel, who commanded him to preach the message God sent him. Inspired by these messages, Muhammad began to preach to the people of Mecca, urging them to give up idols and to submit to the one indivisible God, Allah. By 651, the followers of Muhammad had published the revelation that Muhammad had received from Gabriel, and they were published in the holy book called the Quran, which is the Christian equivalent of our New Testament or Old Testament. Islam simply means submit to God, and the community of Muslims consisted of those who had submitted to Allah by accepting the final revelation given by Muhammad. Now, revelation. Most mainland Christian, Jews, and Muslims believe Jesus was the final revelator. Muslims believe that Muhammad was the revelator. Now, Christians believe that Jesus was a savior. Muslims believe that Muhammad was a prophet as Jesus and Moses and other of the Old Testament. So now there's one religious group in America that I will point out to you is the Latter-day Saints or the Mormons. If you stayed in a Marriott or hotel, you will find a Book of Mormons. So they believe that Joseph Smith received more revelation beyond Jesus. So, so Muslims, however, believe that Muhammad was the last of the prophets, completing the work begun by Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Muslims worship the same God as Jews and Christians. They just call him by a different name. Jews call him Yahweh. Christian call him Jesus, God, Jehovah. Muslim calls him Allah. But it is the same God, the same monotheistic belief. Now, it differs in doctrine and teachings. So, this ended paganism and among the Arabs, and they became uncompromising monotheists, the belief in one God. Now, the Quran sets a strict code of moral conduct. It calls for Muslims to recite a profession of faith in Allah and in His Prophet, Muhammad. Pray 5 times a day, fast and pray during the sacred month of Ramadan. Make a pilgrimage to Mecca once during one's lifetime. Give alms to the poor and not indulge in alcoholic beverages and gambling. They are not supposed to lend money at interest rates. And of course, pork is forbidden. They basically adopted the dietary regulation articulated in the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus. It's no different. They do not have, supposedly do not eat pork or other animals described in the Old Testament. And so this is one relationship between the Jews and the Muslims. They also have the same Sabbath day. Jews and Muslims believe the Sabbath began at sundown on Friday and ends on sundown on Saturday. Saturday is their Sabbath day, whereas most Christians believe Sunday is the Sabbath day. The Quran set forth an austere sexual code. It condemns lascivious behavior of man and woman. In Western society, the law tends to punish prostitutes, but not their clients or John. Islam stresses the last judgment, just like in Christianity, and an afterlife similar to the Christian one. According to Islamic theological development, salvation is by Allah's grace and choice alone. Believers who suffer and died for the faith in battle were assured the reward of heaven. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are similar. They are all three monotheistic. They worship the same God. Muslims call Jews and Christians the people of the book, meaning people who possess scripture. They're called dhimmis. Now, Muhammad united the nomads of the deserts and replaced the tribal bonds that held them together. Once they were united, they began to expand. And now it starts when Muhammad urged the destruction of idols in the Kaaba at Mecca, which brought revenues to the city. The townsmen turned against Muhammad, and he and his followers were forced to flee to Medina in 622. This was called the Hijra, or immigration. Muslim dates the beginning of their era from this event. 622 is the date they believe that Islam was founded. In 10 years, in 632, Muhammad dies, and the crescent of Islam controlled the entire Arabian Peninsula and much of the Middle East and North Africa. The Mediterranean Sea stopped being a Greek and Roman lake and became a Muslim lake. So Islam arose within a tribal society. without a governing institution. When Muhammad died in 632, he left a large Muslim ummah, a community. The ummah had to be maintained and faith carried to the rest of the world. Now, this created the problem with choosing a successor for the prophet. And this led to conflict, and it led to Islam splitting into half. One group became Sunni, the other group became Shiites. It's no different than in Christendom. You have Catholics and you have Protestants. But this is one of the conflict. The Muslim state are organized based upon their whether they are Sunni or Shia. The majority of Muslims are Sunnis. The initial supporters of the Prophet's successor was Muhammad's nephew Ali. He was assassinated, but his followers became Shiites. You'll find Iran. Iran would be the major Shiite country today. The Islamic State was governed by Sharia law. That means by the Quran, not secular law. But during this time period, because of the conflict between the Sunnis and the Shias, there was decentralization of the Islamic State, but that was all brought back together by the invasion of the Seljuk Turk, who are Indo-Europeans. They're not Arabs. They accepted Islam as Sunnis, overran Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and basically would survive up until the World War I. In the early 13th century, the Mongols exploded on the scene, and they, led by their leader Genghis Khan, also converted to Islam. So what was life like for the people of this? When the prophet appears, the Bedouin tribal group held that members of the tribe were descended from a common ancestor, and they were ruled by a sheikh or chief. In 711, the Muslims crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, defeated the Visigoth kingdom in Spain, and began Muslim control of Spain until the 12th century, until the rise of Ferdinand and Isabella, which led to Columbus coming to America. We've already talked about the Battle of Tours, which halted their expansion into Europe, which maintained that Europe would be Christian instead of Islam. Now, the chief reason for the spread of Islam was the jihad, a holy war. Just as Christians believed they had a missionary obligation to spread their faith, Arabs or Muslims felt the same obligation of the jihad, believing those who waged holy war or jihad would be ensured happiness in the afterlife. This is why those terrorists drove their planes into the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. They believed they would be instantaneously lifted up into heaven by fighting for their beliefs. That's hard to fathom, but it does exist. But also during this time, the Europeans regarded the Muslims as heretics or infidels, and this led to what we call the Crusades. But they did recognize protected people who had scriptures, the Jews, the Christians, the Zoroastrians, they're called Demis. The Quran also, I need to point out to you, forbade the enslavement of Muslims or protected people. Christianity does not, or did not. So the Muslims conducted a brisk slave trade of Africans across the Sahara Desert. But once they converted to Islam, they were assimilated into the Muslim society. Women, though, in classical Islamic society, what can I say? The Quran represents moral precept rather than social practice. The texts were open for different interpretation. It's no different than you reading the Bible. You can go into the Old Testament and New Testament to justify any behavior you want. It doesn't matter. It's the interpretation. And so most scholars believe that the sacred book intended for women to be the spiritual and sexual equal of men and gave women considerable economic right. This Islamic ideal of women and men of equal value to the community did not last. Just like in Christianity, the Islamic society, a change in the Quran was interpreted to meet different circumstances. Therefore, the state of women declined. As wealth replaced birth as criteria for social status, men more and more viewed women as possession, as a form of wealth, and women were considered to be inferior. And this status is revealed in three ways: in the relationship of women to their husband, in the practice of veiling, and in the seclusion of women in the harem. On the rights and duties of a husband to his wife, the Quran states that men are in charge of the others, and women, because Allah has made the one to excel over the others, and because men spend their property for the support of women. So a good woman is to be obedient. The Quran permitted a man to have 4 wives, provided that all are treated justly, so it allowed polygamy, more than one wife. Islam held that sexual satisfaction for both partners in marriage was necessary to prevent extramarital activity. They believed a sexually frustrated person was considered dangerous to the community. Abstinence and chastity were discouraged, although men and women were thought to have similar sexual instinct. Men were entitled to 4 wives, while women had to be content with 1. This satisfaction of sexual impulse for male allowed polygamy, and then also I will tell you this: the veiling, the female mutation or female circumcision, where the clitoris of the woman is removed. That is done to assert control of a woman. The belief is that a woman is sexually insatiable, but she has to be controlled by a man, and therefore she has to veil herself, and in some cases, her clitoris, her sexual organ, is removed. This is a means of superiority, and it's brutal when you come to think of that. But this will lead to what we call the purdah. In trade and commerce, the Muslims was excellent. The cities of Baghdad in Iraq and Cordoba in Spain were at their peak during the 10th century and stand out as an example of cosmopolitan Muslim civilization. They had libraries, studies, but their main contribution was mathematics. They gave to the West Arabic numbers. Before that, we're using Roman numerals. Arabic numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sometimes they're called common numbers, but they're Arabic. They also passed on the algebraic concepts. So the Muslim worked with ophthalmologies, and preserved the teaching of the Greeks and the Romans and handed it off to the West. Guys, that's going to end this lecture. So check your blackboard, listen to the lecture, study your study guide, and take test 3. We will have test 4 the last week of November, and you can submit your research paper to me at any time. Be blessed and stay safe. Caver out.